Welcome back to Not Enough Projects. Today we are working on a 91 Chevy Camaro. Overall, a pretty cool car. It's got the 350, disc brakes all around, paint's a little rough. But yeah, overall it's a pretty cool car. I think it's got a posi rear end. It's an auto, but it's pretty optioned out. It's got power locks, power windows, AC, all that jazz. Pretty cool car. Anyways, the reason we're working on it is because it's got brake issues. As you can probably guess by the front being up, it's in the front area. See this wheel turns pretty normal. Driver's side wheel does not budge. It's totally seized up. What I'm guessing we've got going on is we've got a rubber line that's swollen and acting like a check valve. So it'll let the pressure through, but it won't let it back. And it'll hold the caliper, obviously, compressed against the rotor. So how we're going to check that is we're going to loosen the bleeder. If it releases a bunch of pressure and the wheel starts turning, then we'll know. We just need new lines all around, because if one's gone, all the other ones are not far behind. Hopefully you can see the bleeder all the way up here. It's got a rubber cap on it still. Let's take the wheel off so that we can get at it a little better. So already we're running into issues. We got a lug that looks like it broke off in there. So I don't know, I don't think it's holding on that tight. We'll just try giving her the what for with a hammer. Some slamming on the back. Got her to pop off. Now we can take a look here. So we'll go grab, looks like a 10mm. Pop her off and see if it releases any pressure. Well, it popped some fluid out. Oh, and I can turn the rotor, so good sign there. Okay, so I bet you that's the issue. Let's tighten the bleeder back up. We'll press in the brake pedal, see if this locks back up again. More than likely it is going to. Okay. Yeah, totally. Oh. Obviously I don't have power brakes, so let's see if she, let's see. It takes a fair amount of effort to get her to turn. Very little effort to get it to turn. So yeah, we've got a line that's degraded internally and externally, as we can see. So we're gonna get new lines all around, and this thing's been sitting for a long time. So we probably ought to just go ahead and get new calipers all around. I'll see how much they are. And obviously we're going to need to get that situation sorted out. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is like my Fiero, where the lugs are integral to the rotor, and the rotor has a bearing pressed into it, a bearing races rather. So we'll probably just get a new rotor, new rotors all around, because you can see this one's been heat damaged. Because actually the story on this car is, I'm working on it for the new owner, but the previous owner was driving down the road, pressed the brakes, and front's locked up on him. So no bueno. That's why I got parked, sat for a long time. Now we are working on it. So yeah, we'll probably get some new pads, rotors, calipers, lines ordered. We'll just get everything squared away. Also wheel bearings, because we're in here. Alright, we finally got all of our new parts in, so let's go ahead and get the fronts torn down and all squared away. Alright, so we'll start off by removing the caliper from the bracket. It's held on by two 3/8 Allen key headed bolts. So we'll back those off, and then the caliper should swing out. And here's our caliper. Since we're going to be replacing the whole brake line, we're going to need to undo this clip that holds the line onto the strut. I can't exactly tell how this pries off because it's so dirty and it may be seized in there, so I think we're going to remove the bolt that holds this bracket onto the strut. Here's the bolt I'm talking about, and it's a 1/2 inch. Ordinarily you wouldn't want it to hang from the brake line, but since this one's already trashed, I'm not worried about it. Okay, now we'll go ahead and get the rotor removed. So to do that, we got to pop the dust cap off for the bearing. I did go ahead and get some new dust caps because they're like $2 or something, and a lot of times they'll get messed up a little bit when you pry them off. There we go. You see now we've got this castle nut and cotter pin. Go ahead and get the cotter pin out. And this nut should not be that tight. Should be under just a little bit of tension to preload the bearings slightly. Okay, now the whole rotor should pull out. You want to watch out because this front bearing and washer will come out. Bearing doesn't look too bad at first glance. Feels okay. Then we've got a seal back here and another bearing. And here is our spindle. So we're going to go ahead and clean all this old nasty grease off and get everything really nice and clean so we can get all of our new stuff on. If a spindle's really been abused, you'll see some pretty heavy grooving here where like basically the bearing seizes up and spins on the shaft. This one feels fine. There's some staining, but it's only surface level. It doesn't actually feel groovy or anything like that. And bearings can't see, they can only feel. Alright, that should be cleaned up enough. Let's turn our attention to getting this old line removed. So where I am up in southwestern Idaho, rust really isn't too big of a deal. This car is actually kind of rusty by my standards, which I know anybody who lives in a rust belt state's laughing right now, or maybe crying. All that to say, we don't get very much rust. If you have a car that's really rusty, sometimes the line nut will seize onto the line. That's pretty uncommon for where I am, but still it's always a good idea to use a line wrench. It just keeps from the wrench slipping off of the hex. So we're going to give this a go, and we're going to feel for if it starts spinning and also taking the line with it. So you'll see that the nut won't spin freely on the line. It'll actually twist the line off if you keep going, so you got to use some heat, lubrication, whatever. So hopefully this one comes off easy. It is, so that's nice. Because brake work gets a lot less fun when you have to do hard lines. So I'm going to grab a pan to catch our brake fluid. Alright, now the lines are separated. One bolt this mounting nut. It's a 1/2 inch. Now we'll go turn our attention to our new rotor and bearings and seal. Alright, here is one of our new front rotors. This is front driver's side, you can see right there. That's the one we're working on, so perfect. You can see this one came with new studs pressed in. It always makes it easy on us. And it already has bearing races installed. So it's always a good idea when you're replacing rotors to also replace your bearings, and you have to replace the seal because there's no way you could remove it and still reuse it. Unless you were in like the apocalypse or something, I guess, but we're not. So we're just going to test fit our seal. It looks perfect. I believe this is the inner bearing, which is wider than the outer bearing. You can see it came with a race, but we're not going to need it. We've already got one installed. You know what, I think we're going to actually knock this race out because technically, and you probably can get away with that, a lot of guys do, with reusing the one that's pre-installed, but technically different bearings that have the same dimensions could have a different race. So just to be on the safe side, we're going to use the race that came with the new bearing rather than the race that came with the rotor. So we're going to knock that out real quick. There we go. There's the one we don't need. We'll also go ahead and knock out the other one. Let me make sure, because you can get bearings that don't come with races since this is common, but and honestly you can get away with leaving those in, but it's best practice not to. And the outers came with new races too. We'll knock this one out. There we go. Now we'll grab our new inner bearing race, drop that in, and grab our race driver. So we just need to find the right driver piece for the race. That one feels a little big. think if we just drive it this way, it'll be fine. You just don't really want to drive on the surface, even though this is aluminum. So it would be fine, but I think we're just going to drive it like that. So I don't have another driver that's exactly the right size. You hear the tone change? Still have a little ways to go, but there we go. Bottomed out, you could hear the tone change to higher pitch, and you also feel that it wasn't moving. Not that you could feel it, but I could feel it. Now we'll do the outer. The outer is a smaller race, and it looks like the wrong bearing, actually. Awesome. Well, it looks like we've got the incorrect outer bearings, because this is the one that came in the new rotor. This is the old bearing. It fits correctly. So we're going to have to make an auto parts store run. Go grab a new outer bearings, I guess. Not a big deal. But we can still get the inner bearing squared away. So first things first, we need to get the new inner bearing packed with grease. If you don't pack it, it's going to fail. Obviously it needs lubrication. So there's different ways you can pack it. They make fancy packing tools. It's like a cone, you stick it in and pump it, and it pushes grease through all the rollers. I do it the old school way. You just grab a palm full of grease, like that. Grab the bearing, you have this side that way, and you just grab it and push it through. And what will happen is you'll see grease starting to get pushed through the rollers and out the top. And that's when you know you can move on, rotating it. You see it coming out the top there? So I'll bring you guys back once I'm all the way around the bearing, and we'll set it in. Alright, we're fully packed. No need to be shy. Can't over grease them. So once it's packed, I like to just rub some on the outside. It's fine. Drop it in. There we go. It's going to be harder to turn than it was fresh out of the box, because the grease actually does make it harder to turn, but it actually lubricates it. If you just put it in dry, it's going to burn up very quickly. Okay, now that the inner bearing's set in there, we can go ahead and put our new wheel seals in. Well, just the one for this side, obviously. Okay, so I grabbed the driver. That's about the right diameter. Set that in there as square as we can get it. And we'll just drive her on home. Then we'll get a dollop of grease. Pre-lube the seal. If you don't lube it up, it's going to leak. Okay, there's the inner side done. Alright, we got the proper inner bearings now. Outer bearings, rather. Hopefully. Let's find out. Yep. So probably the problem was when I was ordering from Rock Auto, I accidentally chose the bearings for the 1LE option. More than likely, whatever. Looks like we got the right driver too. There we go. Now we should be good to get the rotor back onto the spindle. Before we get too far on the rotor and spindle, let's get these mounting brackets off of the old brake hose. So you can see we've got some kind of retainer clip here that we need to figure out how to take off. There we go, just pry it off. There we are. Okay. Just need to take off this one. There we go. See, the brake hose is toast. Now we'll just compare the old brake hose to the new one. All looks good. You see this bracket fits on a certain way. There's a hex, and then it's curved right there without a hex. And you can see the same is true on the bracket. So it goes on just like so. Okay. Same on the line side. Only fits on one way. There we go. Maybe we'll wait on that one until we get the caliper hooked onto the line, just to make it a little easier on us. Okay, we're going to make sure the spindle's clean again. See, it slots in. like that. Now we need to go grab the outer bearing. Alright, our outer bearing is packed just like the inner. I'm also going to add some grease inside. Throw our bearing in. Right, and then we've got our spacer. Then our axle nut. Okay, so it's tightening there. Now you don't want to put this too tight. You don't want to like run it down super crazy or anything like that. But you do want a little bit of preload, especially on new bearings. Older bearings, if you're just repacking them or something, you don't really need preload. And also you have to line up the holes, obviously, for the cotter pin. So there's only really one way we can go, because the hole right now is right there. We definitely don't want to tighten it more because it's already real tight. We'd have to really crank down, so we'll loosen it to there. Make sure we don't have end play. We don't. Spins nice. So we'll put our cotter pin in now. You know what, we do actually have another hole as an option. I think we're going to go with that because it's about an 1/8 turn more. And I do want a little bit of preload. You want just a tiny bit of drag on new bearings. So I think we're going to go there. Get a new cotter pin. And there we go. Alright, now I've got our dust cap. I like to fill them up with grease because what happens when this heats up is the grease actually kind of turns into a liquid and it flows. I mean, more grease isn't going to hurt it, so I like to put more than enough. Okay, there we go. Let's give our rotor a quick clean. Alright, now we can go ahead and move on to our caliper. Get this line back in. Well, an Amber Alert turned off the video recording without telling me, which is awesome, so I don't know how much you missed. The soft line wasn't quite bolting up, so I had to undo that to make these line up a little easier. Tighten them up, bolted that back down. Now we are ready to get our new caliper on. Alright, here's our new caliper. Only got it because it's red. Just kidding. Came with new slide pins, which is nice. You see that sliding in and out. Old ones were a little rusty, so that's perfect. Let's get this loosely on there just so we have the line held in place. So obviously it's going to go like so. Now right now this is straight, but it's going to need bent up. So we'll bolt this down and then get the caliper in place since this is kind of fighting us. Let's get our new seal rings. So we didn't get a new banjo bolt, we'll have to reuse the old one. But we did get new seal rings. So these are copper rings. There's one on each side, so we'll start there. Then the other copper ring goes here. And we thread on like so. Don't need to go crazy with the torques here. Let's thread in our lower slide pin. Usually to do brake pads you can just take one out and it'll fold out, but I don't know about on this one. Looks like that may not be the case. So we'll keep the slide pin out until we have the pads all set. So our new pads came with new slide pin bushings and all that, but we don't need that because they came on our new rotor, or our new caliper rather. So on this car, the inner and outer pads are not the same. So we are going to need to figure out which one goes which way. Okay, so this pad right here is the outer pad. And then this pad with that wear indicator goes onto the piston. Now the left and right side pads are different, but they will only fit one way. This bar here needs to go down. Now we'll get our new pins, grease them up somewhat. Then we'll use our 3/8 Allen to snug them down. Make sure we have free movement on our caliper, which we do. Now we're going to tighten up the line bracket. Okay, there we go. We'll torque the caliper slide pin bolts to 35 foot-pounds. I do like to torque the caliper mounting hardware down just because it's brakes, you might as well be safe. Then we'll double check our line connection to the caliper. Perfect. Now I'm going to go do the other side. It's the same exact procedure, so I'm not going to film it. Then we'll move on to the rears. Alright, here is the passenger side completed. Now we're going to move on to the rears, which are a little bit more involved because you got the parking brake, but we don't have to deal with bearings. Alright, so the rear wheels on this car still have the center caps. You just pry it out with a screwdriver. Then we'll pop the wheel off like the front. So you can see the rears are a fairly different setup. The calipers have provision for the parking brake, so it's obviously mechanical, whereas the actual driving brake is hydraulic. So how that works is it is kind of like a arm and a screw, so as it pulls it that way, it screws the pad out. So we've got the parking brake disengaged right now, so we should be good. To undo everything, we'll start by taking the caliper slide bolts out. So weirdly enough, these mounting bolts are 15 millimeters. So we'll undo the top and bottom and pull the caliper out. So to get to the lower mounting bolt, you have to take off the parking brake bracket, or the parking brake cable and the bracket. So I think we're going to try popping these tabs so that the cable can go out, and then we'll see about unhooking the cable down here. Alright, Ben, I figure insert this after I take off the wheel, because I forgot to film it on this side. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is take the caliper off. To take it off, it's not like the front. You don't take off the slide pin bolts. The easiest way I've found is you take off these 15 millimeter bolts that hold the caliper bracket to the backing plate. These are pretty dang tight. They're going to get torqued to 70 foot-pounds when we're reassembling. Looks like this thing has newish shocks. See, they're still painted, and you can see they're KYBs. That's what I always use. Check out that pad. See, we've got these little retainers. You can see we've got these little retainers on the caliper, or on the rotor rather. If you live somewhere rusty, a lot of times the rotor is going to be rusted solid to the axle. I'm going to be lucky, spoiled, and it's going to come right off like that. But if it does stick, you just got to get a big hammer, just pound on every side, pound on the back. It's a whole deal. You get heat. Heat helps. Luckily, I don't have to deal with that ever, so. There's our axle. Now we just need to undo the lines to our caliper. So we're going to start by removing the hydraulic line. It's a 13 millimeter, or ½ inch, I guess. Okay, now we got to deal with the parking brake cable. This is a little bit of a pain. It's not terrible though. I found the best way is you stick a screwdriver in like that, pull it back far enough. Now it's fighting a little bit. We're going to need another screwdriver. There we go, just like that. And it's got all these metal tabs that we got to push in. There we go. Now the caliper's fully detached. Next, since we are replacing the brake lines for obvious reasons, we need to detach it from the axle housing bracket right there, and we need to unbolt that hard line. This one's been undercoated or something, so I'm using a bigger size than it actually is to kind of, it's like rounding off a bolt, except instead of rounding off the bolt, we're rounding off the undercoating. Alright, this line doesn't want to come loose, so we are going to give it some heat. hard for me to see with you guys in the way. Oh, and if I didn't mention it, it's a 12mm. Weird size, but 11 definitely isn't right, which would be 7/16. And 13, which is ½ inch, is obviously way big. So we've got the hard line loose from the soft line. We need to take off that bolt that holds the bracket onto the trailing arm. Same deal on this line, we just got to pry off the little clip. Of course I dropped it in the brake fluid, which is awesome. There we go. Should have put gloves on. Jeez. There we go. Now we can get our new line. So the brake hoses are different between the driver's side and the passenger side. The driver's side has this longer hose. The passenger side has a much shorter hose. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. But just like the front, it only keys in one way. There we go. Whoops, slipped off. It's always good practice to clean up the axle rotor mating surface. I just use a wire brush on a drill. Good enough. I always like to apply a little bit of anti-seize or never seize to the hub, just to help keep the rotor from sticking in the future. Here's our new caliper. All nice and clean. I'm going to start with the park brake cable. Just goes on the opposite way. Came off. Like that. I think we'll do the brake hose last. So let's go get our pads. Unlike the fronts, both the inner and outer pads are the exact same. So it makes it easy on us. We do have to take note of this little sliding spring part. So we're just going to lube up all the places of contact. Okay, we'll start the inner pad. So we want to make sure this lays down flat. And then it acts like a spring. So you got to push pad down to get it to seat. And you just push back. There it goes. Now for the outer pad, it's the same deal. There's tabs that these two tabs slot into. There's slots where these two tabs slot into. So you push down. And it goes. And it should slide onto the rotor nicely. Just like that. Now we'll grab our two 15mm mounting bolts. Get them threaded back in. Then we'll snug those 15mm bolts down. We'll torque those with a torque wrench. But before we do that, we need to deal with our hydraulic line. Here's the banjo bolt. Our rotor came with a new one. Then we just need to fold our soft line back. I don't remember exactly how the routing goes, so we're going to take a clue from our old line. Okay, yep, so it goes like that. This new line may be, maybe not. Gotta make sure you get your sealing rings on, or else you're not going to have brakes. Alright, let's get our caliper mounting bolts torqued to 74 foot-pounds. Alright, rear brakes are pretty much complete. The last thing we need to do is take care of our new center brake hose. It goes from the body of the car down to the differential, because obviously the differential goes up and down. The axle housing, I guess, is actually the correct way to say that. So it needs a flex line to account for that, and then it has a flex line from the axle housing to each caliper. So we're gonna have to climb under the car to do that. All right, so here we are. Here's the center line, the old one. See, it's cracking just like all the other ones. A little crusty up there. That's not gonna be the most fun, but I think it'll be okay. So yeah, we're just gonna undo this line. Gonna undo that bolt. Actually, we may not even need to undo that bolt. We may be able to pry that little retaining spring off. Then the line should pull out. Obviously, we're gonna have to undo both the left and right rear lines, and then there's a bolt up through the top that's gonna need to remove so that the block can come up. Then we can put our new line on and just do the reverse of that. So I don't know if I'm able to film it and get a very good angle in here, so I'm just gonna do that and report back to you. Alrighty, there's a new line in. Used a 14mm wrench in this, which is basically the same as 9/16, and the hold down bolt up here was a 13mm or 1/2 inch, and both of these were the same as the other sides at 12mm. That all the brakes on all corners are buttoned up. It's time to bleed the brakes. Before we do that, I'm gonna suck out all of this old nasty brake fluid with a syringe, and then we're gonna fill it back up with the new stuff and bleed it through. Alright, so we're refilled with clean fluid. Now there's a lot of ways to bleed brakes, and clutches for that matter, that are hydraulic, but I found the most reliable and really the easiest method is the classic two-person method. You have one person working the brake pedal and you have the other one cracking the bleeder when the pedal's down and closing it before they let the pedal up. There's also gravity bleeding, which is a good way to get started when your lines are empty. We're going to do that. Then you have the one person bleed, where you slip a hose over the end of the bleeder, put it in a bottle of brake fluid, crack it open, and you just pump the brake pedal. I've had mixed luck with that because a lot of times you won't get a very good seal between the bleeder and the hose, so you'll get air in. So that's why I just do the two-person, and then you've got power bleeding and all that. But anyways, we're just going to be doing the classic two-person after we let some brake fluid flow. So we're going to go around and crack the bleeders on all of them, and one at a time we'll make sure we have constant brake fluid flowing through the bleeder. We'll close it, go on to the next one, and then we'll be ready to do the two-person bleeding. So it's best practice to start with the wheel the farthest away from the master cylinder. In our case, it's the passenger rear. So what we're going to do is get a catch can under, crack this bleeder, let the fluid flow out until we get a steady stream. Alright, here we go. I can actually feel some air coming out. That's a good sign. Now really, when you're doing gravity bleeding, the best way to go is if you can get the master up higher than whatever you're bleeding. We don't have that right now. We're fairly level. It's still up higher, but I'll have to say it might go kind of slow. We may end up just needing to go straight to the pump method. Oh, there it goes. Just slow, like I was saying. So you can see we still got old fluid coming out. All brown and gross, so we're going to wait till we got some nice clear stuff, and then we'll know we're all the way up to the master cylinder. This might take a while, so I'll bring you guys back once it's flushed all the way through. Okay, it looks like we're getting nice clean fluid through, so we can go ahead and close this bleeder. We'll move on to the driver's side rear. Man, they really cranked that down in the factory, huh? Now we should have fluid all the way to the center line onto the differential, so this should come through pretty quick. And then we'll go check our master to make sure we're not running low on fluid. It's already looking pretty clean, so we'll let that drip for just a second. Yeah, that's good fluid. Perfect. You can see we are running a little low, makes sense. And I should have mentioned this, but you don't want to snap it closed, because when it's closed, it doesn't let air in under the cap. Instead, it has those rubber things that take up the space. So you want to leave it open so that it doesn't vacuum lock and that the fluid can easily flow through. We'll refill that, and then we'll move on to gravity bleeding the fronts. Here we are on the passenger side caliper. Of course, they put the bleeder in a really inconvenient spot. Man, they really tightened that one down too. Okay, I'll leave that open, but I think we're just going to go on to normal bleeding procedure. Alright, so a good way to start off, since we don't have any fluid up here, is to use our finger kind of like a check valve. Just put it over the bleeder like that, and then when our pedal operator pumps the pedal, it'll let the air out past my finger, but it won't let it back in. So go ahead and slowly pump all the way down. Just keep pumping it for a little bit. Oh, getting some fluid now. Okay, just a second. Perfect. Alright, so now that we've got fluid to this one, all we're going to do is press the brake, open the bleeder, close it, let off the brake, and we're just going to do that over and over until there's no air bubbles that come out. We're going to do it all the way around, and then the brakes should be good to go. Alright, we're going to go ahead and take it out, bed the brakes in, make sure all is good. And also off camera, I went ahead and put new wheels and tires on it. Definitely improvement over the old ones and the old studded snow tires. But shoot, I forgot to take off the stickers. That's going to be a pain in the butt to take off. Alright, so here is the packaging for the brake pads. Pretty much any manufacturer has a really similar break-in period. So we're going to go 40 miles an hour, slow down to 10 5 times, moderate to aggressive stops. Then we're going to do 5 decelerations from 35 to 5 moderate. And then we're just going to drive slowly, let the brakes cool down. And ideally, at no point you stop, because when you stop, the rotor's not spinning, and when it's super hot, the pads can actually warp the rotor, not necessarily warping the metal, but the brake pad material deposit on the rotor isn't even, and it'll cause juddering when you're braking. So that's just ideal. Now, this is only really necessary, in my opinion, when you're doing something that's going to be driven spirited, like this thing. When you're just working on brakes for a go-around town car, you don't really need a betterment. Pretty sure the tack is not accurate, because I don't think we're screaming at 7,000 RPM right now. Alright, we're at our secret Mexico headquarters right now. We're going to go ahead and do the stops. Alright, so now we're just going to drive around, let it cool off. Nothing too exciting. Feels like it drives okay. Tack is disorienting. That's to the floor. A little bit disappointing, gonna be honest, but you know, it's an early 90s Camaro. It's fun. Alright, there we go. Brakes feel great. Drives okay. We're gonna pull the check engine light code. It could just be, I mean, it was disconnected from the battery for a long time, so I don't know if it's code for battery disconnected. We'll see. If there's anything serious that we got to diagnose, we'll do another video on that. Check engine light turned off as soon as I turned the car off and back on. Sometimes you just got to do that, I guess. So I think it's good. I'll probably take it out, put a tank of gas in it, make sure all is good. But otherwise, I think the owner's going to get this thing wrapped, and so yeah, it's going to be a cool car. See you guys next time.